Hello and welcome to Hockey Talk right here on Shaw TV. I'm Jaret Schneider alongside Matt Durnan. Matt, we had a good week in the NHL last week, a couple of good games. Also, today we'll get to some NHL news. We got a couple of questions from some viewers, as well as we'll go over our picks from last week. We both got a little bit better from the first week. So good start so far. So first of all, what do you think about last week's game? Had a couple of good matchups and some surprise teams so far.
I liked it. I'm really surprised right now about the Canadian teams. They've been having a great start, actually. We've got, I think, everybody but Calgary right now is in a playoff position.
Yeah,
it's been a long time since you've seen, 6, 7 Canadian teams.
Toronto's sitting in ninth.
Toronto's sitting in ninth, tied with the Rangers right now in eighth, technically in a playoff position. But yeah, good start. I mean, very surprised at Ottawa. I had them again picked last of the Canadian teams. They're starting out. They're 4-1 now. They're facing Montreal tonight, who is also 4-1. Vancouver, little shaky. Edmonton's been solid. Calgary, as I mentioned, kind of in the bottom, kind of trying to find their own way. But yeah, a lot of good matchups last week. A lot of good games. Chicago and San Jose looking good starts. But you can see everyone's kind of settling in now. The games are starting to get a little bit more pace to them. Guys are starting to get their legs on them, and the game's actually been taken off. So, as I mentioned, Sharks, Hawks. My question to you would be: 6-0 starts, both of them. Are these guys for real? Are these the teams to beat, kind of in the West and in the NHL as a whole? Or is it just kind of a quick start and you're going to see them level off a little bit?
Well, obviously we thought, the Sharks and the Blackhawks would have good starts, as they have. It's good to see them keep rolling from their first week, their first couple of games. Both teams are 6-0 now. The Hawks do play tonight, so we'll see how that goes. But yes, I do think the Hawks are the team to beat in the West right now, definitely. The Sharks we'll see as we move forward into the playoffs because we know how well they perform in the playoffs.
They're always really good in the regular season. Not so much in the playoffs.
So they're usually up to the top. So we'll see what they can do, as the rest of the regular season moves forward into the playoffs. We'll see if they hold down a playoff spot and what they can do in the playoffs this year, but that's not for a while, so we won't get too far ahead of ourselves. We also have the St. Louis Blues, who came out to a rocking start. I kind of thought they would.
Good young team,
from last
good young team, good goaltending.
Good in the playoffs last year, so good to see that. In the East, we also have the Bruins, who are on top in the East, have one overtime loss, but other than that,
no regulation
basically
losses.
undefeated.
New Jersey, no regulation losses either.
3-0-2
they just
in New
lost
Jersey,
to Montreal, I think was their most recent loss.
Yeah.
In OT? Or did they lose one more recently than that?
I'm not 100% sure.
I feel like it was recent, but I could be imagining it.
Yeah, so which teams are going on? What things right now would you say are kind of surprises at the top? Obviously, we have Chicago and San Jose, but is there any other surprises maybe that you would think to this point of the year?
A little bit surprised about Chicago, to be honest. You said Chicago's good. I mean, good young team. I never would imagine. Crawford is still kind of a young and unproven netminder. He's looked lights out. San Jose, a lot of people were picking them to be kind of middle because they are getting a little bit older. I mean, you look at the guys that are scoring for them right now. They got Thornton and Marlowe looking like they're back at 22, 23 years old again. Just absolutely lighting up the scoreboard. In the East, New Jersey's really surprised me. I didn't think that they would jump out this way that they have.
Yeah, Brodeurs played really well.
Brodeurs played really well. Not sure if they're for real. Who knows? We'll wait and see, I guess. My surprises are more so on the bottom end of things. I can't really understand what's going on with Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Pittsburgh started out 2-0 and now have won one of their last four.
Yeah.
And in pretty dramatic fashion, they lost 5-2 to the Leafs, got blown out on home ice, just got beat up on home ice last night to the New York Islanders, 4-1, I believe it was. And
yeah,
the
it was 4-0 right until the end, and then they got a goal in garbage time with a minute left.
Garbage time, and it really didn't matter. So other than that, they got dominated.
Basically a shutout
on their own ice. Yeah.
The Islanders.
So I'm a little bit. What do you think is wrong with teams like Pittsburgh and Philly right now?
What's wrong? Tough to say exactly. I mean, it is a short season, so obviously we mentioned the start has to be big, and it hasn't been for either team so far to this point. With Pittsburgh losing a couple of games, Pittsburgh, I don't know. I mean, it's tough to say they won't get things turned around. I think they probably will. At some point, they'll get things moving back in the right direction moving forward. Obviously, they've dropped a couple of games now, but you can't really rule Pittsburgh out. To say what's wrong, it's tough to say, really. Obviously, offensively last night, didn't have any production at all from Crosby. Had their chances, but the Islanders just shut the door defensively as far as Pittsburgh goes. As far as LA goes, it's good to see them turn it around. Got a couple of late wins now after starting pretty bad. So they're, I believe, in a playoff position. I think they're sitting in 8th right now.
Yeah, they got Colorado tonight, who's been a little bit struggling and missing their captain too. So I don't know what's going to happen with them, but
Colorado, they're doing all right. I think they're 2-3 right now. But LA, it's good to see Quick had a couple of bounce back games here.
Couple of wins.
They had that one against Edmonton. I believe it was Saturday or Sunday night.
And the Rangers have bounced back as well.
The Rangers
We've
have
seen them
bounced
win
back as
2
well.
straight now, so they're kind of getting it together a little bit. Vancouver, I'm mixed emotions. I'm kind of on the fence with them. They've lost 2 games. They lost pretty bad to San Jose, but everyone's losing bad to San Jose, other than Anaheim last night.
Absolutely.
And fought a tough game. Had it up to about 50 seconds left against LA when they tied up and ended up losing in a shootout. So Vancouver, I think, is going to kind of come around. Philly, who knows? Hartnell out now is really going to hurt them because he fit in really well with Giroux on that line. So I think Philly might have a little bit of a tough time, especially without having really solid goaltending back there with Brizgalov being what he is. So for them, I don't think Philly is going to be a playoff team this year, to be honest.
Oh, you don't think so?
I'm going to put it out there right now. I don't think Philly's... Hartnell's going to be out for almost a month and a half, I think is what they're saying right now, 4 to 6 weeks. And that much time for
They
that.
just haven't looked good this
top
year.
line, they just
No.
haven't looked good, and I think they're not going to bounce back. Also, going to Pittsburgh, I think they're really missing Jordan Staal. That good third line center, that good grit guy. They're kind of missing that, where it's a lot more on Crosby, who are good players, Crosby and Malkin. It's much more on their shoulders. They don't have that deep scoring that they did before that they could kind of get away with if Crosby or Malkin had an off night, where they had that third line that could punch up. But I think without him, it's kind of hurting them. But I think Pittsburgh is still a playoff team.
So you mentioned Philadelphia. Obviously, you don't think they're going to get in. I think they will at some point. I think they'll turn it around. They might. Obviously, they're not going to. I don't think they're going to win the division. I mean, that division is so equal, though. I mean, it could be the third place division in the conference.
Well,
so
the way New Jersey started,
New Jersey's playing 3-0-2.
the Rangers,
Philadelphia, I think they might get in. They might get a 7 or 8 seed.
I think they're all better than them. I mean, fourth in that division is going to be tough to make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true. That'll be like a 7th or 8th or even like a 9th or 10th seed just out. But Philadelphia, I think they could turn around. You mentioned the top scorers already with Marleau and Thornton absolutely dominating everybody. Marleau had 8 goals in his first 4 games, and he's up to, I believe, like 15 or 16 points now through 6 games.
Yeah, him and Thornton have combined for, I think, like 24, 25 points at least. They're
Marty
just crushing
St.
it.
Louis in 3rd in the league right now. He's got
the old guys. I said at the
so
start of the season that I thought it would be the young guys who would come out and just rip it up. Who knew? The old guys. Maybe that extra break has kind of rejuvenated their legs. They've had that little extra time off, and it's just helping them out.
So my question to you would be then, which players, obviously the old guys are a little bit of surprising at the top, but what scorers have been kind of surprised to this point of the year? Which guys have kind of stood out offensively and kind of got some points?
Well, obviously St. Louis, as you said, old guy Teddy Purcell, who's playing on a line with St. Louis and Stamkos, has had a great start. I think he's got about a couple of goals and about 7 or 8 assists, so 9 points in his first 4 or 5 games. Stamkos isn't a surprise. You know that he's going to get his points, really. I hate to sound like a homer as a Leafs guy, but Kadri, who's been at over a point per game clip, he's been putting up points. JVR with the Leafs as well. You can even go with the guy like Tarasenko.
Yeah, he's
drafted in 2009. You could consider him a rookie, but he's been putting up good production out there in St. Louis. So I've liked him. I've liked his game a little bit. Who's right now sitting in the lead with Boston? It's not Sagan. He's at a slow start. I think it might be either Horton or
Horton's got a bunch of
Horton
points.
or Bergeron that are actually like turning it on for them. So they're a well-balanced team, and they've had a couple of guys who are kind of laying the weeds and put up points. But I don't know, for you, who would you say has been performing well?
Offensively, I mean, you got to go with, we had Marleau and Thornton, obviously. Some of the Ducks aren't doing too bad. Getzlaf and Bobby Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
To this point, they've had decent years. I mean, obviously, they're not completely out there, but they've got their 8 or 9 points, whatever. Another guy, I guess, for me would be, obviously, with Landeskog out, some of the Avalanche guys are going to have to step up. You might see Duchesne do something a little bit more now, hopefully. Hasn't done anything so much at this point. He's got 5 or 6 points, but
they're going to need O'Reilly back.
They're going to need O'Reilly back. He's out with his contract still. He was playing over in Europe, though, so, I mean, a couple of weeks out, but he should be in somewhat of a decent game shape if he does come back, hopefully soon. We'll mention Ben and Subban coming up, with them coming back, but we'll do that with hockey news coming up. So that's a little bit further on, but we'll take a quick break.
We'll get to that after.
We'll talk about some hockey news when you come back. You're watching Hockey Talk on Shaw TV. Welcome back to Hockey Talk. Got some late hockey news here this past week, Matt. A couple of signings. Subban is now with the Canadiens. He's practicing again. Hasn't played yet, but we'll see him in a bit. Jamie Benn has played a couple of games now with Dallas. They both got, fairly decent deals. Subban, 2 years, $575. He'll only make 1 this year with the half season because he's only supposed to get 2. $375 next year he'll get $475 out of the 5 with the 2
$3.75 million.
$3.75 next year, right?
Okay.
So what do you think about Subban and his deal? Obviously, only going to get $1 million for the rest of this year, but that's all right with it being short season. Then he'll get his $3.75 next year.
I think Subban probably could have got a little bit more. I think that's what he was holding out for. He wanted to try to get a little bit more money. That was why he's hanging on. He kind of got hosed because Andrei Markov came back and was playing so well. So Montreal was able to kind of play hardball with him and say, look, like our power plays.
Not that we don't need you, but look at how good
we're managing just fine without you. We're 4-1 right now without you. We don't necessarily. It's kind of a bad choice of words to say we don't need you because they do need him. Who wouldn't need the guy? But he kind of was in between a rock and a hard place because you're saying, my value isn't up. If Montreal was struggling on the power play and was losing, he could easily say, look, you guys need me back, right?
Yeah.
And probably would have got more money. But it is only a 2-year term, so who knows what happens next year.
And that's kind of what Subban wanted. He actually wanted the long-term deal, but that's what the team wanted out of it was a short-term deal.
Yeah.
And that's why Subban, I think he kind of got the benefit of this deal actually, even though he's only going to get $3.75 next year. I think Subban's going to get the deal out of it because obviously he's got to prove himself again, right?
Yep.
To get a new contract, he's got 2 years to prove himself
Then
again,
he might get that
which
big
isn't what he wanted
long-term
to do. That's why he wanted the long-term deal, so he didn't have to prove himself again. So I think, in a sense, it's kind of a win-win or a lose-lose situation for both sides of this one because Subban's got to reprove himself, but the long-term deal out of it, the Canadians, you never know, right? I mean, he could prove himself again and then make himself worth the $6 million. So, I mean, it could go both ways.
Realistically, what do you think Subban deserves yearly?
It's tough to say. I mean, he's only a few years
5-ish?
into the league. I'd say 4.5 tops.
For a top-end defenseman?
4.5.
Is he realistically Montreal's defenseman of the future?
Maybe.
Maybe.
What do you think?
Don't sit on the fence or anything.
Do you think he's their future defenseman? The number one or number two guy in the top pairing?
I'm kind of partial because I'm a Leafs fan, so I'm not. It's hard for me to compliment. He's a talent. He's got a good skill set. His hockey IQ I've never thought is that great. He makes a lot of dumb errors because I think he was able to get away with a lot of stuff in junior because he was so athletically gifted and he could do things that he probably can't get away with in the NHL. And you see him, he gets caught out of position. He goes for big hits a lot of the time. He tries to rush the puck in situations that he might not be well advised to be doing. But how can you argue with talent, right? So you might be able to teach him. I don't know, hockey IQ is kind of something that you're either born with or you're not. I don't see him being a number one defenseman, and I don't think he should get number one defenseman money. Maybe number two.
I think you're right.
Maybe number two, maybe a power play specialist because he does have that shot and he is offensively minded. But I don't think he is a true number one defenseman.
So if you put him on the Leafs, obviously the Leafs have better D, I would say, than the Canadians with Phaneuf up there. But if you put him on the Leafs, what D pair is he going to play in on the Leafs since you are a Leafs homer?
I would probably have him as the number two pair. I would have him probably playing with somebody like John Michael Lyles, or
they would complement each other really well.
or a Cody Franson. They're both offensively minded. The Leafs don't have a lot of stud stay-at-home defensemen, and that's what PK needs. And the Habs don't really have that per se either. They've got a guy like Josh Georges, who's a stay-at-home guy. But I think when you've got, and you see that with Dion Phaneuf as well, who kind of is the same mold as PK, where he's an offensively minded, hard-hitting defenseman, not the most defensive-minded, not the smartest in his own zone. And for those guys to shine, like Phaneuf did in Calgary when he had Regeer next to him, you need that stud stay-at-home defenseman so that he can afford to wander and not worry about making too many mistakes, whereas Phaneuf is out there rushing the puck, trying to cover up for Carl Gunnarsson, and they're both all over the ice. So I think PK kind of needs the same kind of guy. He needs that big stand-up guy. So he's a number two or a 2A, where he's the number one guy on the second pair. He's not really the number one.
I would agree with you. As far as Jamie Benn goes, just got his new deal. I believe he got 5 years, $30 million. So we got a bit of a longer deal, got obviously a lot more money out of it.
I like it.
He got a big deal. I think he deserves it.
I think he's the future of that organization.
Yeah, him and Louis Eriksson.
Him and Louis Eriksson are the future of that organization. They traded away young Mike Ribeiro, arguably young, getting on the back end of his career, but he was one of the more offensively talented guys. They picked up Yager, who was an older guy.
Yeah, that's why he's there to lead those younger guys, right? To lead
Derek Roy, who's a little bit injury prone. But I think Jamie Benn is the future. He's an all-star last year. I think Eriksson and him were the only all-stars on that team, really. Lettinen's proved to be a pretty solid goalie, but I think Jamie Benn going forward is going to be the face of that franchise, possible future captain, at least an assistant captain. So I think that deal at 5 years for $30 million is a great price. I think Dallas won on that one. I think Jamie Benn won on that one because he's going to be the face of that franchise and great player.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great for him. Obviously, now he doesn't have to prove himself like Subban kind of does here in the next year to try and get himself a new deal. So with him, average of $5.5, $6 million a year. So good to see that from Ben. We got a couple of questions. We'll get to the questions now. We got two. The first one will go to Brad from the Paw.
This is Brad Karp?
Brad Karp.
Brad Karp. Hey, Brad.
Voice of the OCN Blizzard. He asked us.
And host of Sport Report.
And host of Sport Report. Who are so far the most impressive rookies to this point of the year? Who would you think? I mean, obviously we've got Tarasenko, who's tearing it up.
Yeah, I mentioned him earlier.
In St. Louis, you mentioned him earlier.
It's hard to call him a rookie, right? Because he was drafted in 2009, I believe. So 22, 23-year-old rookie.
Yeah.
But he's looked really good out there in St. Louis. Good team, though. It's easy to kind of hide those guys in there because he doesn't have to be the number one guy.
And he's playing on the top line, I believe. He's playing on the top line.
Who's he playing with?
He's playing with
Oshie and Perron, maybe?
Bacchus?
Or Bacchus, it could be.
Something like that. So, I mean, he's right up there. He's playing power play, too. He's gotten a couple of power plays.
They waited with him. They did a good job with him. St. Louis waited. They did a good job. Other than the kind of over-the-top celebration, I've liked Yakupov's game. He's fitting in nicely there. He's a good fit for that young team, good young speed guy that's going to add some goals. Still, you see him making a few dumb mistakes that he was making because he's been playing over in Europe. He's still kind of, I guess, getting adjusted to the NHL hard-checking kind of game. I really like Justin Schultz's game in Edmonton. He's looking like he's going to be the defenseman of the future for Edmonton. He's a really good player. I've liked his game. Trying to think of who else is
Well,
really
I would go
good.
to Montreal. I would go to Gallagher and Galchenyuk as two rookies playing together on the same line with Brandon Prust. That line has been great. I mean, they put up big points. They're winning games for the Habs. They're doing what they need to do. What are they, 4-1 right now, the Habs?
Yeah.
And I would say lots of it is due to those two rookies. Those guys have played well right off from the hop of the year. They're both going to play the rest of the year. They were told by the Habs organization that they're going to play the rest of the year, so they're not going to be sent back down.
Yeah, that's got to be nothing.
That's good for them.
That's nothing but good news, really, for Habs fans because they were looking at a long-term rebuild, and when you see guys like Gallagher and Galchenyuk playing the way they are, the rebuild is kind of already underway, and they're winning with these guys. So maybe the rebuild might not be as drastic as you thought it was, where you had to do a complete overhaul. These might be guys that you could kind of build around. They could move up, be a second liner, and then potentially your future first liner. There's a lot of guys that I think they have a lot of dead weight in Montreal, as far as guys like Giunta. Captain right now, but really he's not contributing too much. Pacioretty, young guy, hurt right now, had the appendectomy. He'll be back, but he's a young guy that can kind of build around. But they got rid of Gomez, which is good. Guys like Plekanec, I think, are kind of on the way out. Travis Moen kind of had a dumb fight last night in Winnipeg, in Montreal against Winnipeg. He's a guy that you can kind of see he's on his way out, but. Good young core there. I like those rookies. That's a good point by you.
So our second question here before we take another quick break is actually on Twitter. We got it just before the show from @FrankD, and he asked us, "What about
Frank?
What about Ovi? Do you think he'll be traded? Does it look like he'll be traded with obviously not the great start he had? Picked up a couple of goals now to this point, but does it look like he'll be traded before the end of the year? I mean, that's a tough one with the money that he makes.
Will he be traded is kind of a tough question. I don't know what the GMs are thinking. I don't know what his stock is at an all-time low. So. Does Washington want
for the rest of the league, but
does Washington want to trade him? I don't know. He is the face of that franchise. He's always going to be Alexander Ovechkin, right? He is that guy.
He's the number one draft pick.
He's always a number one draft pick.
He's been compared forever.
He can go off and score 40 goals any given year. He hasn't proven it lately. I don't think the question is, will he be traded? I think the question is more so, should he be traded? And should he? I've thought yes for the last 2 years since he's been struggling. I think Washington is just the wrong market for him. He's the star there, but realistically, the hockey market in Washington isn't huge. If not for Ovechkin, people aren't watching hockey, really, to be perfectly realistic. I think he needs to go to that huge market. He needs to go to a Detroit, a Chicago, a New York, a Toronto, a Montreal, even a Vancouver. He needs to go. He loves that rock star mentality.
Yeah, you're right.
He needs to be the center of attention. And while he's sort of getting it in Washington, I think he really needs it in a big market where everything is going to be on him all the time. It's all about him. And I think that's why he's going to perform, because when he first came into the league, he was this dynamic young guy, big personality. Every eye was on him, and he performed. And now that he's kind of made it known that he's a superstar, and people are just kind of expecting it rather than focusing on him, he's kind of gone by the wayside. So I think he kind of needs that, rejuvenation, get back to somewhere where everyone's going to be putting all these eyes on you, and that's when he'll really step up and perform.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you with Ovi. Obviously, he does need to be the star of attention. That's kind of the way he's rolled his whole career to this point. As far as going to a bigger center, I'm not too sure about that one. I mean, I think he's he's a fairly good fit in Washington. They've totally built the team around him. Obviously with their offensive defenseman they have with Green back there and Alzner, and then obviously with Backstrom on his line, and now they've picked up Ribeiro to kind of balance all the rest of the lines. I think he's a decent fit in Washington. Obviously he hasn't had the start he wanted this year and didn't have a very good year last year at all. But in the KHL this year, he did do very well in the KHL up to this point. So, I mean, it is kind of surprising as to why he isn't performing in the NHL. And maybe
could it be,
is something coming back on him now? I mean, he's 27, 28 years old. He's had this long deal. He's about 4 years into it now, 4 or 5 years into it. Got a few years left. Is it a mid-season, is it a mid-contract slump for him?
Could it be, though, as I said, he's back in Russia. He's back where he's loved, and he's a hero there, and everyone loves him. So the focus is there, and he wants to perform because he wants to put on a show. He's a showman at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The guy is a huge performer, huge celebrations. He definitely loves the game, but there's maybe not enough focus on him. He doesn't feel like he wants to perform in Washington. I don't know.
Yeah. So as far as picks went this week, we both improved so far from our first week start.
Take a quick break. We'll get to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. We both had the starts that we wanted, but we will get to that right after we take a quick break. You're watching Hockey Talk on Shaw TV. Welcome back to Hockey Talk. I mentioned our picks right before the break, so Matt, I'll go to you with some of the recap from last week and how things went between the two of us.
Okay, well, we both improved. I got my first pick right after week 1, where I finished solid 0-4, but I went 4-3 last week. That brings my total up to 4-7. You went 5-2. Good job on you. You went 5-2 last week, and that brings you to 7-4. So 4-7 for me, 7-4 for you. Together we're 500.
So I mean, that's what you can ask for.
Last week's game, I'm not going to look too much into it. We both picked Vancouver, both got that right. Philly, you got right over me. Pittsburgh, we were both wrong against the Jets.
Yeah, the Jets had a big game there.
LA over Phoenix, that was the first one that I've got right that you haven't got right.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why I picked Phoenix over LA.
That was
our Western Conference rematch.
That was curious, especially with Mike Smith hurt. I don't know what you were thinking.
That was a bad pick. I didn't know he was hurt at the time, I don't think, did I? Or was he hurt then?
I don't know. You were wrong regardless.
I was wrong, yeah.
Detroit, Chicago. I picked Detroit. Close game. Chicago won that in OT.
OT, yeah.
Yeah, that was
we were watching that one, too.
Good game. Chicago at the 6-0. Edmonton, Colorado. Edmonton won that. We both picked that one right.
Yeah.
And then San Jose, Anaheim. Last night's game.
Just about lost that one.
Just about blew it. San Jose came back, tied it up late. So I'm going to just get the schedule here and pull it up for this week. I think we're looking at tonight's game. We're looking at Montreal and Ottawa. That game is in Ottawa. Both teams coming off back-to-back games. Both teams won last night, so we're really this is kind of a something's got to give situation as far as who's going to win tonight. Ottawa, Montreal.
Tonight, that's in a couple of hours here. Ottawa, it's tough to say. I mean, they're both good teams. Montreal to this point is 4-1. Ottawa is 4-1-1. So I mean, Montreal had their good start last night. They beat the Jets. It's
almost a coin flip.
Beat the Jets last night. It is almost a coin flip. It is in Ottawa though. It's tough to say. I mean, I got to go with the Habs. I mean, it sounds bad. I think the Habs are due for a loss. I said that up with the Jets last night too, and the Jets did lose. But I'm going with the Habs.
You're going with Montreal. Okay, I'm going to stick with Ottawa then. I just think the travel is going to catch up with Montreal.
They played last night.
They lost their first game, and now they've won 4 straight. I think they're kind of due for a loss here, as you said. Yeah. So and the travel going from Winnipeg now back to Ottawa. I think that travel is going to kind of catch up with them. They might kind of peter out late in the game, and I think Ottawa will get through. I'm thinking maybe 3-1, 4-2.
Yeah, a close game, a low-scoring game, that's for sure.
I don't think it's going to be a big. Let's move on to tomorrow night's games. We've already picked a game between these teams. Different story now in the season. We've got Pittsburgh against the Rangers in New York. Pittsburgh won the first game. Pittsburgh's kind of sliding. New York's picking it up. Teams are kind of on opposite ends.
Pittsburgh doesn't play tonight. Neither do the Rangers. So that'll be Pittsburgh's game tomorrow. After coming off a couple of losses and that big loss to the Islanders, I got to go with the Penguins. I think they'll do it again. I mean, it's tough to say. You said it's in New York, though, right?
It's in New York.
So, I mean, the Rangers with Lundqvist at home, it'll probably be Lundqvist and Fleury. I mean, Fleury didn't play last night.
No, Fleury played last night.
He did play last night. He got pulled.
He got pulled for Voku.
I think he'll be back in the cage. He'll be doing. He'll have a good game. I got to go with the Penguins on this one tomorrow night.
Okay, I'm going to go against you again.
We'll get with you again.
Yep, I'm going to go against you. I'm going to go with the Rangers because I picked them once and they lost. So I'm just playing the percentages here and saying if I pick them twice against Pittsburgh, 50-50 shot. They got to win one. That's all my logic on this one. Friday, good rivalry game. teams on, again, kind of opposite ends. Chicago is visiting Vancouver. Chicago undefeated as of right now.
They play tonight.
As of right now, they play
tonight,
but they're playing Vancouver, who's 2-2-2, I believe. Been kind of shaky. They've looked good and bad at times in Vancouver. What are you thinking?
So that'll be a late game out on the West Coast. Chicago, they play the Wild tonight. I think since Chicago's 6-0, I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to say Chicago loses tonight and beats Vancouver.
Okay.
On Friday night.
Okay.
Because they're going to go in 6-1. If they go in 6-1, they'll win. If they go in 7-0, they're going to lose.
No, you can't put asterisks on it.
So that's what I mean. If they lose tonight.
You're still taking Chicago.
Oh yeah, no, I'll take Chicago.
Okay, you're taking Chicago regardless.
For sure. So Chicago in Vancouver. I think the Canucks. I'm not sure the Canucks play tonight as well, but.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to stick with you on that one. I think Vancouver's just too fragile without that second line healthy, and I think Chicago's just got too much depth. I think even if Chicago wins tonight, goes to 7-0, I think they go to 8-0 and they beat Vancouver anyways. I just think they're the better team. They're deeper, and they've been playing better hockey.
Yeah, Saturday's game.
Interesting game. We're going to go to
off the board again.
It's hockey night in Canada, but we're staying in California because we live in the north and we want to go to California because it's warm there.
Why not, right? I mean, what
LA against Anaheim.
LA and Anaheim. So that's
Anaheim looked good last night. Pushed San Jose to a shootout. First team that's really given San Jose any kind of scare.
They were leading the whole game until late.
Yeah.
San Jose scored
late.
So
5 minutes left in the third when Couture tied it up. So LA has looked a little better lately, picking it up. John Quinn's starting to find his game. They're starting to pick it up. It's in Anaheim, but again, like we said when we picked the Anaheim-San Jose game, last night's game that we both picked San Jose, home ice doesn't really mean so much. Same state, there's not a lot of travel, so home ice isn't a big deal. What do you think?
Same time zone, so there's no time change. I got to go with LA. Saturday night, I got to go with LA. John Quick should be, and then LA or Quick has played every game so far. They haven't even played Bernier yet, so it'll be surprising to see when they finally do play Bernier. I mean, obviously, maybe the bad start was kind of the reason that kept Quick in it.
Just try to let him find his groove.
Find his groove and get a couple of wins, get the team back in it. So I'm going to go with LA on Saturday.
I'm going to go against you on this one, too. I'm going to go with Anaheim.
Okay.
I like the way that Anaheim played last night against San Jose. That's the first time I've watched Anaheim play other than the domination of Vancouver, but I couldn't really gauge too much on that because it was the first game of the season. You can't take too much from it. But Anaheim looks like a good team. They skate well, they're fast, they're big, they're physical. Hiller looks really good in the net, and I think LA's going to edge that one. Close one, maybe a shootout, maybe an OT win, but I'm going to take Anaheim in that one.
So
Sunday, another sort of rivalry game. How can we not pick this one? Teams both kind of struggling. Pittsburgh and Washington. Crosby versus Ovechkin. You got to go with this one.
Obviously, Crosby hasn't started. Where is that? That one in Washington?
That one's in Washington.
That's in Washington. That'll be a Sunday afternoon. I imagine that would be an NBC game.
It's just like
it probably is. It's probably Sunday afternoon in Washington. I think I'll go with the Penguins on this one, actually. I mean, Washington hasn't had the start they want, and Pittsburgh's looking to climb back in after a couple of bad losses. So I think that's 2 games this week I'm taking Pittsburgh on. So
you took them against the Rangers
again to climb back up.
I'm going to stay with you on Pittsburgh just because I've got Pittsburgh losing to the Rangers on Thursday night. So I think after a little bit of a slump, I think they're going to claw back out of it and they're going to beat Washington. And Washington's looked awful. They've looked a little better their last 2 games, getting their first win and then losing, I think, in overtime to Ottawa last night. But I'm not convinced. I think Washington's a pretty bad team, and I think Pittsburgh's going to wipe the floor with them.
That's Sunday. What do we have for Monday?
Monday, we've got an all-Canadian matchup. We've got Vancouver, again, the Canucks, going into Edmonton.
Edmonton. This is the first game you pick for them.
This is your pick to upset them in that division, in the, the Pacific?
Northwest.
No, Northwest.
That's the Northwest.
You're right, yeah.
Edmonton and Vancouver, that one's in Edmonton on Monday night.
That's in Edmonton on Monday
night.
Well,
there's obviously pressure, but 2 Canadian teams, but it is Monday night. It's not a Saturday Hockey Night in Canada game. Dubnyk, hopefully see him in the net against Schneider. I got to take Edmonton.
You think Schneider?
Well, I mean, he's played most of the games.
Luongo played really well against LA.
I think Luongo's going to play tonight, but I think.
Okay.
But I'm going to go with Edmonton at home.
Okay.
Edmonton, they've looked good. I mean, Yakupov obviously scored that late one against Colorado a few days ago.
No, LA.
LA a few days ago, tied up. So I mean, I got to go with Edmonton. They're kind of rolling right now, and they'll keep it going.
Okay, I'm going to go with Edmonton as well. I'm buying into your theory that they might be the best team in the West, or at least the best in that division.
They're looking all right. What are they, 3-2
They got to
now?
settle in a little bit, but you can't argue with their offensive talent. They're fast and they're young up front, and they're just going to really start. Once they really start gelling, they're going to be a scary team. I've watched them a couple games now, and you can kind of see they're just on the verge of kind of really clicking in and really hitting and starting to really punish teams. And I think they're going to start dominating some teams.
Yeah, goaltending and defense is probably the only
a little bit weak. Yeah, they might need to adjust that. But
and Dubnik's looked all right though. I mean, Dubnik's had a couple of good games.
He doesn't have to be great with that offense.
No.
Realistically,
they could
score 4 or 5 goals a night. Realistically, if they look at it, this could be going back to the late 80s Wayne Gretzky, Yari Curry era of the Oilers, where they just play fire wagon, where they can go ahead and score 5 against us, we'll score 6.
It's a shootout, right?
It doesn't matter.
Kind of like Tom Brady in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly.
All he's got to do is score 40 points.
Exactly.
He'll always win.
So let's wrap up our week with
Wednesday.
another good matchup. This could be a potential Western Conference final. We don't know because the Western Conference is really wide open. There's a lot of really good teams in the West. But we've got the Nashville Predators, who've maybe stumbled a little bit.
Yeah.
Still a good team. Going into St. Louis, good young team who we've mentioned earlier tonight.
Obviously, I don't actually think that'll be a Western Conference final. I don't think Nashville's going to do a whole lot this year as well as they did last year. I mean, last year they got to the second round, lost to Phoenix. But I got to take St. Louis on that game because St. Louis, the great start that they've had, we mentioned Tarasenko's tearing it up for them. I mean, their offense looks really good. Goaltending, obviously, they're probably like the best goaltending tandem in the league with Elliott and Halak. I mean, they played really well last year. So I got to go with St. Louis. I believe that one's in St. Louis.
That one's in St. Louis.
I got to take St. Louis at home next Wednesday. I mean, it's a little bit far ahead, but St. Louis over Nashville for sure without Suter kind of hurts Nashville to this point.
Okay, I'll stay with you on that one as well. I think St. Louis, they're a strong team at home. They were really good at home last year.
Yeah.
Nashville hasn't really convinced me yet. They haven't really looked great the way that they did last year. Maybe Rene having a little bit of problems, a little bit of problems scoring, maybe missing Ryan Suter, as you had mentioned. That could be a little bit of an issue to them. Not really any bona fide stars in that team either. They've got a lot of similar mold almost, I would say, as St. Louis, where there are no really bona fide offensive stars. They've got guys like Mike Fisher, Martin Erat, Patrick Hornquist. Yeah. They've got a lot of guys that aren't really so well known around the league, but are talented guys. Yeah, guys that can get it done. They basically got 3 second lines. Not really a bona fide top line.
Yeah, I would agree.
But a lot of talent all the way through their depth chart. But I still think St. Louis is a little bit better, and I'm going to take St. Louis in that one at home.
So that basically wraps up picks for this week. Last week I was 5-2, you were 4-3, a total of 7-4 for me, 4-7 for you.
I'm still below 500. I'm fighting to get back to 500
You'll get back,
this week.
Yeah, we'll get it back. So that'll pretty much do it for picks this week and the show. We would like to thank Brad and @Frank D for sending in their questions. We'd also like to thank everyone for watching in Flin Flon and the Paw as well as here in Thompson. And for the Sport Report, I'm Jaret Schneider, Matt Durnan. Thanks for watching.